Hello and welcome to the Feeling Good podcast. I am your host, Fabrice Nye, and joining me here in the Murrieta studios is Dr. David Burns. Hi, David.
Hi, Fabrice.
Dr. David Burns has been a pioneer in the development of cognitive therapy, and he is the creator of the new team therapy. He is the author of Feeling Good, which has sold over 5 million copies in the United States and has been translated into over 20 languages. He is an emeritus adjunct clinical professor of psychiatry at the Stanford University School of Medicine. Welcome to episode 69 of the Feeling Good podcast, and Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year.
It's 2018. Can you believe it?
Happy New Year. So this will come out on a Monday. That's the first?
Yes, the first of 2018 is a Monday.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, great, fantastic. So this is New Year's Day today? So if we're real dumpy and hungover sounding, join the club. They won't have high expectations. No one will be listening probably. They're all in bed,
Yeah, so we'll get a pass on this one.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll be totally hangover. So today we're talking about the I Feel technique, which will be in our series, the fourth technique in the 5 secrets.
Right. The others being just the 3 listening skills,
yes.
the empathy skills, which are disarming technique, thought and feeling empathy, and inquiry.
Yep.
That's the EAR of EAR, empathy, assertiveness, respect.
Yeah.
And the A, the assertiveness technique, is that we're discussing today, I feel statements. And then the last technique we'll be talking about in the next podcast is stroking. And then after that, we'll pull these together in a variety of ways, integrate them, show how to use them in various situations, talk about the inner dialogue versus the outer dialogue.
And I want to add that we have Helen with us again for this episode. We were able to kind of retain her because she needs to go to a party, and not a New Year's party, but so we have her for just a little while longer. So talking about the I Feel technique, Helen and David, aren't the listening skills in therapy or even in human relations about listening? Why do we need to kind of talk about ourselves? Isn't that about the other person?
Yeah. By the way, I think that's such a great question. I thought of another story I can tell on assertiveness, which was equally bizarre.
Okay.
But I think that we people are looking for one answer to things, and there aren't simple answers or simple formulas you can follow. And some people, for a long time, it was assertiveness therapy. And, the secret of life is to share your feelings. Actually, you have
encounter groups.
Oh, yeah, all that stuff, right.
Put it all out.
Yeah. And then you have empathy. Oh, everything is empathy, and just learn to be a good listener, and then magic will happen. And I feel like a really balanced approach to human relationships is that your feelings are important, my feelings are important, and then the respect, EAR, is to do this in a spirit and atmosphere of respect rather than adversarialness or putting down. And you have to integrate these things, because if it's all about you, then I'm submissive and self-effacing, and it's if I don't count. And you've already given some examples in the last podcast of expressing what you want and expressing what your needs and feelings are. If it's all assertiveness, that suddenly begins to seem very, very aggressive. Like you're the most important thing in the world, and you're supposed to make demands and express your feelings and tell people what you need, and that just seems real bizarre and self-centered to me. But there are so many best-selling books on, your perfect right, and all about how the world will come together if you're assertive. I read this book, which was actually pretty good, some book on assertiveness years ago. It was called When I Say No, I Feel Guilty, or something like that, I think was the one. And they were talking about how you have the right to express your feelings. And And so I thought, well, this is good. I'm not assertive enough, so I think I'll start being, assertive.
I bet you made a lot of friends with that one.
Yeah, and so I had this old Fiat.
What time is it? No.
I had this old Fiat, and I'd had the wiper blades changed at the local gas station, and I realized they put on the wrong kind because it was raining, and they didn't work. So this is a great time to be assertive. So I drove to this gas station, and there's this burly guy there, and I said, I had these wiper blades changed yesterday, and they're the wrong kind, and I'd like you to replace them. And he said, "Oh, I can't do that right now." And the book said to, just be like the squeaky door, and I said, "Yeah, I understand that you can't do that right now, but I'm going to have to ask you to do that right now because it's raining, and I need the correct wipers on my car." And he said, "Oh, well, we can't do that on weekends do exchanges when the manager's not here. So you'll have to come back, on Monday, and then he'll take care of you." So I said, "Yeah, I hear you saying that you can't do them on weekends, but it is raining, and I'm going to have to insist that you change the wipers on this car right now. This is just right out of the book." and so he just started walking away from me. To go and wait on another customer. Okay. So I walked right up next to him, and I said, "I understand that you're walking away from me to wait on this customer, and you're probably kind of annoyed, but I'm going to have to insist you change the wiper blades on my car right now because it's raining." And he looked at me and he says, "If you open your mouth one more time, you see that monkey wrench there? I'm going to break your effing kneecaps." And I thought, assertiveness doesn't always work. So I drove home meekly and came back on Monday, and the manager changed the wiper blades. But although assertiveness isn't always the answer to everything, it is important to be able to share your feelings. And so let's just talk about this. The formula for an I feel statement, and I'll publish with the show notes, again, the feeling words chart, would be, I'm feeling X. And I don't believe in formulas. I don't believe in being stereotyped. It has to be genuine. It has to come from the heart. It has to be spontaneous. But to say, I'm feeling a bit upset right now, or I'm feeling really anxious, or I'm feeling vulnerable, or that's the kind of thing. And it can be something as simple, often when you have a dispute with your spouse, you get escalating and making demands and labeling each other and arguing, and once somebody said, "Have you ever thought of just saying to your wife, I'm feeling kind of hurt right now. Men have feelings too." Mm-hmm. And I said that once to my wife during an argument. It just worked like magic. Mm-hmm. And it's so different from being aggressive and blaming and
showing your feelings or acting out your feelings rather than saying them.
Yeah, or sharing them. You can share angry feelings if you have angry feelings, but that's different from attacking or trying to hurt the person or
screaming at them or cursing at them or something like that.
And there's all kinds of situations where you can be sharing your feelings. In a socially awkward situation, people are always hiding their feelings and trying to make conversation and trying to look normal and fighting against this awkwardness. Instead, you can just say, "Gosh, I'm feeling kind of awkward right now. Are you feeling that way too? I feel like I'm totally lame, and I'm supposed to say something interesting." And
that just breaks the ice. And I'm glad that I'm part of this podcast, because I would say that the I feel statements is probably the most challenging one for me.
Yeah, me too.
Everybody, you too?
Yeah.
Really?
Me too. Oh, yes.
Oh, I'm not alone.
Yeah.
I feel happy knowing that we share that. So maybe we should talk about why is it so hard for us to share our feelings? I think for me, it's hard to be vulnerable. It's hard to put myself out there and express feelings and open up, and also So one, I guess, sort of fear of vulnerability, and another might be fear of retribution, that somebody will react badly to my expression of feelings.
Yeah, right. And that's why it's so important. These things are an art form. You can't just pound on the keys of a piano and think music's going to come out. I've said that 5 times on the podcast, but it's so true. For example, you can express anger in a very loving or gentle way toward a patient, toward a family member.
You want to demonstrate that? Because I think that's such an art form to do it.
Well, with a family member or with a patient?
How about a patient? Because
Okay.
I think that therapists, many therapists listening probably can't imagine expressing anger.
Yeah. Well, if I do it with a patient, I might first get their permission. It would be out of respect to say I've been having some negative feelings, and I'm wondering if I could share them with you in a spirit of respect. I want to ask you first because I don't want to scare you off or have you drop out of therapy, and my hope is it would bring us closer together. But again, if you're reluctant, I don't want to impose this on you. And I don't think that I've ever had a patient said, no, I don't want to know what your feelings are. And then I might say, to be honest, I've been feeling kind of angry and frustrated with you, and sometimes I even want to kind of wring your neck. I get so ticked off, and at the same time, I think a lot of you. I have tremendous respect and liking for you. But I was wondering if you've been noticing that, and if you've been having some feelings of frustration and anger, and tell me what it's been like for you as well. I think that if we talk about these things, we can form a deeper and more meaningful relationship. We're kind of dancing around this conflict between us. How's that?
I thought that worked really well for a few reasons. Number one, you were very gentle in how you said it. So although you were using the word angry, I think you may have said, I feel a bit angry at you. So you softened it a little bit, because the word angry is very inflammatory potentially.
It is. I mean, a little bit goes a long way.
Right, exactly. So a bit is plenty. And then your tone was also calm.
Yeah.
And then you packaged it with some strokings by saying, I have a lot of respect for you. And there was a clear desire to get closer to the other person. So you were not trying to punish them in any way. But it's tough to do. David makes it look easy, but it sure is challenging.
Yeah. And this is in the framework of therapy. When this happens between two people, especially in a couple, saying to your partner, I'm angry at you, can feel from the speaker's point of view, but this is going to be inflammatory.
And it may be if you say it like that too.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You do have to be careful. Another thing about this is that, like in therapy, I was trained, don't ever express your feelings. Mm-hmm. Always hide your feelings from your patients. I was told that by psychoanalysts who supervised me.
You're supposed to be a blank slate, right?
Yeah. Just mirror back what the patient says. And when you think about it, how nutty that is, because we want the patients to become more genuine and real.
Right.
All the while hiding our own feelings.
Yeah.
Kind of a double standard.
Yeah, I actually have a little story about that, which is back when I was a resident and learning the 5 secrets from David, and we had to take call in the evenings, and there was a woman who would call the on-call doctor every night, no matter who it was. She would call in, and she was someone who had severe depression and also borderline personality disorder. She had probably over a dozen admissions to the hospital for suicidality, a very unhappy woman, and every day and she would call in kind of saying that she wasn't feeling good and that she felt suicidal, and she would want to talk to the on-call doctor. And And so, and it would be really frustrating to the on-call doctor because you'd always have a million other things that you needed to do, and you needed to spend some time talking to this person who called every single day. And so one day I decided to try to use the 5 secrets that I had just learned from David. So rather than, just trying to get off the phone as quickly as possible, I tried to use disarming, and also you're feeling really anxious and upset today, and tell me more about that. And I did my best, and the person said to me, "What is wrong with you?" And actually, she mentioned, should I mention Dr. Anthony Mascola? Shout out to Anthony if you're listening, who was also learning from David Burns. She said, "What is wrong with you and Dr. Mascola? You guys sound like robots," because we didn't use any I feel statements.
Yeah.
And so I think when you say, I feel, let's say with her, I could have said, I'm really concerned about you, but at the same time, I feel a little bit frustrated and irritated because I have a lot of things to do right now, and I'd like to be of help to you. Can you tell me more about what's going on for you tonight? I didn't say anything about how I was feeling, and it turns out that it sounds kind of robotic and not very warm.
Yeah.
If you leave that out.
Yeah.
And so then what happened?
Oh, well, I was just so taken aback by the what is wrong with you that I think I got off the phone in a hurry. Yeah. I think I was like, gotta go.
Yeah, gotta go talk to my psychiatrist.
Right.
Find out what's wrong with me.
Right.
That's great.
And this person could really tell, that you were holding back.
Yeah,
Right.
and then we talked about that, I think, on the empathy broadcast. If you don't combine it with an I feel statement, you will sound like a parrot or like a robot.
Right.
Now, a couple other quick points I wanted to make here, and I'm sure you folks can chime in on these too. One is there's a lot of errors that people make with I feel statements. By the way, what an I feel statement would be: I'm feeling sad right now. I'm feeling kind of anxious. Mm-hmm. I'm feeling a little bit ashamed, a little vulnerable. I'm feeling a bit frustrated or a bit annoyed.
I'm feeling all those things right now too.
Yeah. And
so those are emotion words.
Yeah, emotion words. But a lot of times, actually, therapists will think they're expressing feelings when you're absolutely not. And you'll make statements like, "Oh, I feel that you're wrong." Is that an I feel statement?
No. Anytime you follow the words "I feel" with either that or like, what's coming is a judgment.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you don't do these things skillfully, they will backfire. And by the way, if you are trying the 5 secrets and having a bad experience, if you want to send me an email to get our feedback, we'd love to do that. But what I need from you is write down what the other person said to you and what you said next.
Which is the steps 1 and 2 of the relationship journal, by the way.
Yes, absolutely. And write it down verbatim. Don't put down, "Oh, my husband's always criticizing me," because your husband never said that. Instead, give an actual criticism, and then what you said next, and then we can show you why your response was not effective, what errors you made, how to improve it with the 5 secrets, and model it for you, and that would be fun for us. And so I don't forget it. Your homework for this coming week will be to use 5 I feel statements every day. And it can be trivial examples just to learn how to say I feel. Like you might say, like my wife just said before she went out to do some errands, like, "I'm feeling really demoralized by the political news in the last month or two. I keep listening to it, I keep watching it, and it seems to be getting worse and worse, and I'm really frightened." That was a beautiful I feel statement.
It could be a positive feeling too. I feel really happy to be in this group right now.
Yeah.
And also, it doesn't have to start with the actual words "I feel." You can say "I am rather happy" or "I am."
Yeah.
Or,
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So again, this is just one of the 5 keys on the musical instrument. That this key itself, it could be a whole world of things, but it's sharing feelings is not the same as making demands. You see, the problem with assertiveness is this idea that if you express your feelings and you could say, "Oh, here's what I need you to do," and "I'm very angry because you're not giving me what I need," and it's kind of a demanding kind of thing. And this is more of a vulnerable thing. But as you say, people are afraid of this, and I've mentioned this before on a podcast, but sometimes when I feel down, and I start feeling ashamed, I feel like I've got to hide this because it's an incorrect feeling. And I do this automatically, and people in general, we think I'm not supposed to have this kind of feeling, so I've got to hide it from other people. I gave a workshop. I gave 5 presentations in Anaheim, and the first one was a 3-hour one on Thursday. I showed the videos from this woman with horrible trauma that I had treated, and it went fairly well. But for some reason, there were about 800 people in the audience. It was huge. But for some reason afterwards, it went very well, but it wasn't over the top or something, or maybe it was, but I was just feeling, kind of down, and I was feeling, gosh, David, maybe you're kind of a has-been type of thing. And it felt like I'm, kind of over the hill, and I just felt kind of down. And then I thought, I better not let anyone know that I'm feeling this way, because this is, shameful. I just automatically thought this is a bad, incorrect way to feel. I thought, there's all these people here, and they're so much more famous than I am, and what am I doing at a conference like this? And, there were Philip Zimbardo from Stanford, and all kinds of, big-name people. There were about 50 of them. And then the next morning, I had a workshop, just a little 1-hour one on, when panic attacks. And I went into the room where it was going to be. I was so nervous, I went an hour early, and it was this huge room. And I said, this is going to be so humiliating. Just a few people are going to come. And I was just feeling in this state of, oh my gosh, this is terrible. And then people started coming in, and the entire ballroom filled up.
Wow.
And then I started talking, and they all started cheering and laughing, and they would break into spontaneous applause. They were really, really loving it. And then the next day I asked the fellow, how many people does that ballroom fit? And they said 2,400.
Wow.
And it was like, I was just a little bit off in my thinking, but the point was that I just felt like when I was down, I better hide these feelings.
Yeah.
Have you ever had that?
Yeah, kind of the negative thought is I shouldn't feel this way.
Yeah.
And then you add suffering to whatever pain you're feeling.
Yeah. And the last point I want to make is that in a future broadcast we'll go over the resistance that people have, but I have a list of 12 good reasons not to express your feelings.
Yeah.
And we'll go over that, but there's intense resistance we have. Like I had a patient once, and she was trying to date. She was real good looking. She's a small woman, but very attractive, and she ran this huge company. Her husband had died. She took over the company, and she was trying to date, but she'd get a lot of dates, but she couldn't develop deep relationships with men. And I noticed she wasn't expressing her feelings. Everything was superficial. Mm-hmm. And so the dates would never go to a deeper level. And I talked to her about sharing your feelings, and she said, oh, no, my mother told me don't ever let people know how you're feeling. And I said, well, why is that? And she said, oh, because then they'll take advantage of you. And so she actually she had these rules: don't ever express your feelings, and there are other forms of resistance as well that we can deal with in the future. So any last words on this, Fabrice?
Well, I think that there may be more to say about it, but I think for the technique, this will be a really good expose for our listeners, and it'd be interesting to see what feedback we get after they actually try this for a week.
Yeah.
I have one additional thought, let's just say, for the therapists out there. In addition to softening inflammatory words like anger and using stroking to package them, I think you also need to be careful to keep the focus on the patient, so that if you say, I feel so sad and anxious, and then you just like fall apart, then the patient feels like they need to take care of you.
Yes. When you share your feelings as the therapist, the goal is to make the patient feel better.
Yeah.
So like if you're ripping into me as a patient, I might say I'm feeling a little anxious right now and a little uncomfortable and ashamed because I really like you. And I think we can work together, but clearly you're angry with me now, and I've been missing the boat in the therapy. And tell me more about that. This can help us improve the therapy. You see, that statement makes you as a therapist human,
right?
But you're showing self-respect and respect for the other person, and that's so crucial when you do this, because if you express your feelings in a self-effacing way, it'll be pathetic.
And you were sturdy, even though you said all those feeling words. You weren't dissolving in a puddle that made me feel like I then had to take care of you.
Before we turn it off, can we do one last role play, and I'll model horrible I feel statements on the part of a therapist.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So you be my you or either one of you can be my patient and criticize me. Now, please, listeners, I'm showing you how not to do it.
Okay.
This is the dysfunctional use of I feel by the therapist.
Okay. Well, this therapy isn't really going anywhere. I've been seeing you for 3 months now, and I feel just as depressed as day one here.
Yes, I hear that from all of my patients. In fact, all of the others have either committed suicide or dropped out of therapy because they all said I couldn't help them. And my wife is divorcing me too because she says I'm a total loser, and my dog won't hang out with me anymore either. That would be kind of...
Yeah, that would be what not to do. So that you made it about you.
Yeah.
And it would... Yes.
And the goal is to get the patient to take care of you. So there is an art form to doing these things. And so with that, we will say once again, Happy New Year to everyone. And thank you so much for joining us, Helen. It's just, as Fabrice says, you make these things sparkle and come to life.
Wow, thank you so much.
All right, thanks.
This has been another episode of the Feeling Good podcast. For more information, visit Dr. Burns' website at feelinggood.com, where you will find the show notes for this podcast under the blog page, and where you can leave your comments and questions. The website has an abundance of resources for therapists as well as non-therapists, including books, workshops, a list of online training groups around the world, and much more. Theme music is Gypsy Jazz in Paris, 1935, composed and performed by Brett Van Donsel. I am your host, Fabrice Nye, and I invite you to join us next time for another episode of the Feeling Good podcast.